Okay, Emma.
Okay, thanks, Emil, Francie. And thanks, Emil, for the invitation to yourselves. I was delighted to be part of it. Just a very brief introduction into myself. So my background is, as Francie said, in sports psychology. So I lecture sports psychology. A lot of my research will be on decision making in Gaelic football, and there's an awful lot of analysis in that. So by accident, I kind of fell in love with performance analysis. So between psychology analysis, that's mainly what I do, mainly with adult teams, to be fair. So like Francie was saying, I split it into two. I know I kind of the assumption is it's a very difficult topic to try and tackle. And that's the reason we split it into two. But as well as that, I would hope you walk away with very hands-on practical skills, because a lot of the time when people work with psychologists and psychology, it can be a lot of spoof. So to debunk a lot of that you have practical hands-on things you can walk away with, would be my main aim. So the psychology skills are broken up into motivational goal setting, practical routine keeping, and avoiding social media overload. To be honest, the main emphasis is on goal setting, because the idea and the hope is if we can set some goals that motivate us, we by default get a routine going, and then we're working towards goals, we're keeping a routine, so then we're avoiding that overuse of social media we see a lot of the time. That's the hope anyway. And then the second part is more performance enhancement, because we're not on the field, we're not training, we're not playing, but we're trying to keep hurling and football and everything else, in the front of what we're trying to achieve. And is there something we can do maybe while we're not training and not experiencing sort of the benefits of games and stuff, to keep the brain ticking over when it comes to football or hurling or whatnot. So we've individual performance profiles, there's personal performance analysis, and there's oppositional analysis, which is kind of split. You can do your own analysis on your team, or you can look at some of the teams that you play generally, or the styles of play that you face. So we'll get started then on goal setting. So they really just define it as when you select a target or objective that you're trying to achieve, you're trying to aim for. So, for example, you could have a lot of players that say, right, I want to be the fittest on the team. That's their goal. But if you've no plan, your goal's not very effective. So I'm sure you see a lot of these visuals when it comes to goal setting. People urge for this smart approach to goal setting. So you make your goals specific, you make them measurable, you make them achievable, and you make them relevant and time bound. Okay, so the whole idea is that the more specific and measurable that they are, the easier it is for us to stick to and get clarity, and they're much more in front of us. Because if you look at the fitness goal, it's quite vague. So what do we mean exactly by fitness, and how do we get there? What does that footpath look like? Whereas when we strip things down and we put them into the smart process, they become a lot clearer for us and the athletes we work with. Um, the only thing personally I would have an issue with is the whole achievable aspect of goal setting. Um, I think if we're quite honest, as human beings, we've no idea what we're capable of, and I wouldn't be much of a psychologist if I didn't think that there's not much out of our capacity. Um, like you take an example, I ask you how fast you can run 1 kilometer in, and 99% of people will give me that ballpark average number, average score. And that includes elite athletes, because we fear failure. But let me flip it on you and say, okay, there's someone in front of you and you're chasing them because they've stolen your brand new iPhone or the keys to your car or your purse or your wallet or whatever it is. How fast can you run the 1K in now? And it's completely different. So we have to be very careful not to clip our own wings in life. And as well, if you're coaching and if you're working with teams in whatever capacity, sometimes it's more important that you set up an ethos and a culture of, sometimes it's not actually always about hitting the goal and reaching it. Sometimes it's about having a culture that we set difficult goals for ourselves, and we set goals that we know are going to be a slog on us. But we know that we can give it, the best run possible. Sometimes we get the goal, sometimes we won't. It's much more beneficial than setting low tier goals and achieving them, because nobody learns, nobody grows, nobody comes through it better. So difficult goals are what I would favor. So I split this up into specific, measurable, aggressive, relevant, and time bound. So I just take out achievable and I just put in aggressive. Because, like I said, you really don't know what you're capable of or what your players are capable of until their backs are against the wall. So be careful not to under, shot your shoot basically on that one. So bring back in the example then of I want to be the fittest man on the team or I want to be the fittest woman on the team. Again, very, very vague. So we need to make that something that's reachable. It's very, very clear and specific to the athlete. So you'd say, okay, well, why don't we aim for the fastest 5K, which is directly linked to, the fittest or in at least among the fittest of the team. Then it becomes specific, it becomes measurable, and it becomes relevant straight away. So you've gone from I want to be fit to I want to have the fastest 5K. And these are things that they can measure, they're relevant to the sport they're playing, and they're very, very specific. So the average 5K is ran in about 30 to 40 minutes. Now, obviously, you'll know yourselves from working with sort of footballers and hurlers, especially in the GAA. These 5Ks are coming in at about 22, 25 minutes now on average. But you'll know yourself, and you've probably been keeping some sort of fitness going in your groups. Lots of people have gone for 3.2Ks, 5Ks. So you'll know sort of what your average scores are yourself that you can set for your players. But if you want to delve into it further, and again, this is kind of general population stuff, the average male between 16 to 19 should run a 5K in just under 30 minutes. Okay. So again, you're trying not to say to players, right, go out there and run the fastest 5K you possibly can, because you're kind of leaving it in our hands. And especially say that age bracket there, and they're thinking, right, well, how do I break this down? Do I just go flat out on a 5K tomorrow, rest for 4 days, try it again? What you want to do is break it up into sort of nice, sort of, reachable components that they're specific for them. So you'd be breaking that down into 3 runs. So 30 minutes by 3 obviously is in around 10 minutes. A 5K by 3 is 1.6. So what you're doing for that athlete is you're saying, okay, 3 times this week you need to run a 1.6K in and around just under 10 minutes. Okay. Then the following week that moves to still 3 runs of 1.6K, and you're clipping off the time to maybe 7-8 minutes. And in the 3rd week, the 3 runs become a 5K. And what you've done is you've given that athlete a structure, you've given them a goal, you've given them very specific and measurable things to achieve and ascertain. And like that too, then it becomes time bound and it becomes aggressive. Because one of the mistakes we all make is like, well, that's my goal. And they're vague. And we don't know how to achieve them. So everything we do with our athletes and with ourselves, if we can break it down into little fragments, into little step-by-step things that we need to achieve for the overall goal, it's much more beneficial. Because we just need to be able to tackle it better. We know what we're doing. It's like, nowadays we don't get in the car to drive somewhere where we don't know where we're going without using Google Maps. We automatically just turn it on because we know, okay, I have a fair idea now with this where I'm going to go. And when you set very specific goals, it's like having your Google Maps on, you know where you're going. So it's really, really beneficial. Unfortunately, like goals are normally set up in short term, that interim and the long term. And unfortunately, yourselves with teams, we've pre-season training, we've mid-season, we've end season. And we know what it should look like for us physically, fitness wise, and psychologically. We know what it should look like through those main 3 phases of leagues and championships. And what's happened to us now is we don't know where the end is. We don't know, are we going back into pre-season? Is it going to be back into mid-season? Is everything going to be rushed? And that uncertainty is what's going to, somewhat halt motivation a wee bit, because you're like, well, I don't want to get too fit now. It could be weeks before we're back. Or, oh, sure, look, if we're back in 4 weeks, I'll start in 2 weeks. And that's where you've got to kind of try and guide them slightly to keep it to weekly goals. So every week you should set yourself or your team their goals. Sit down on a Sunday or a Monday, reevaluate them and set them again. And then everything else gets put in the bag for when we get back. And unfortunately, it has to be as vague as that, as when we get back, because we don't have any return to play or return to training. And will it be different? So on and so forth. So it's week by week, and everything adds up to when we're back, because we know we're going to be back. We just don't know when. Um, but as well as that, I didn't want to just do this all about when we're in these kind of surreal circumstances. Um, Goal setting is really beneficial for athletes, and I wanted to just bring this into for when we do get back, because there's three main processes to goal setting. Um, and one of them tends to be, if it's done kind of disproportionately, it tends to be an Achilles heel for a lot of athletes. And they tend to stumble themselves up. So I wanted to bring this in as ye for players and coaches and managers to be weary of some of the fundamental mistakes people can make when they're setting goals. So you've obviously got your outcome goal, your performance goal, and your process goal. Okay. So the outcome, it kind of is what it says on the tin. It's the end result. It's the league. It's the championship. It's winning the game. All right. Your performance goals very, very specific to your key role, your position. So how you defend well, how you attack well. If you're in a more transitionary position, what does that look like? And then you've got the process, which is everything else before we even get onto the pitch. But if you really sit back and think about it, you've no control as a player, as a coach, as a manager of what happens in the game. We've absolutely no control. Whether it's the weather, referees, certain oppositions, we have no control. So really, you're trying to guide them towards about 10% of their attention and effort to go on the actual game or the actual league or the actual championship. And I know people are thinking, is this one mad? This is what it's all about. It's all about the championship or the win. But I'll tell you where it stands in terms of effort and attention, so you get the win. The performance goals, again, very specific to your positions, your key roles. And yes, whilst we are somewhat in control of how we play and do we fulfill the role we've been sent out there to do, you could say, look, I'm going to be one of those, very sort of up and down wing backs. I'm going to really help the attack here and transition. And suddenly you're marking the Conor McManus or Cora Staunton of the team. And within 5 minutes, you're not going to be on too many adventures here this evening. So we don't have a lot of control over our key roles either. So again, about 20% of the attention and effort. And then you've got the process. And this is the core principle. It's the foundation. And it gets 70% of an athlete's attention, because everything within the process we can control. So I'm going to go back to the process in the next slide, but just for the performance one here, this is the kind of the one I would advise coaches and players yourselves to be wary of. While it's very specific to your role, you have to be very cautious and aware that you have to protect your confidence in the game. Okay, so if you take the cornerback, for an example, comes into me and I'll say, okay, what are your goals for today? And he'll come out with something like, well, I don't want my man to score, don't want my woman to score. I want to make 6-7 blocks, and I want to transition into attack 5 times. And you're thinking, oh, okay, right, fair enough. And 40 minutes go into the game. We're 40 minutes in. His man has 1-2 on him, and he's only made 1 block. Now, that 1 block could have been a block that stopped a goal that would have changed the entire momentum of a game. All right. And again, unless you're marking a robot or a rookie, the chances are they're going to score on you. So you're setting yourself up for a fall here completely with goals like that. Because you're 40 minutes into the game, you've only made 1 block, they have 1-2 on you. And suddenly you start to think as a player, oh, I'm not playing well here. I haven't made many blocks. I haven't been transitioning in for attack. Your man's having a bit of a field day here, so on and so forth. And when we panic, we begin to make incorrect decisions, decisions we'd never normally make on a hurling pitch or on a football pitch. And you've put your performance into the hands of these fictitious numbers, because no one ever come out and said, well, a defender to play well has to make 7 blocks in a game. You might not have to make any blocks. You could still play well and your man could score 1-6. Like if you're marking David Clifford and he scores 1-2, you've done a good job. So it's all about the context. So what you really need to advise your players to do is to never put numbers on the goals they set for a game. Okay, whether it's your corner forward, want to score 1-6, 2-5, whatever he or she wants, or if it's your cornerback saying, I want to, 7 blocks, don't want my attacker to score. It's very, very it's very fragile when we set numbers, because what you want players to do is be able to adapt and be flexible psychologically. So maybe the first 35 minutes isn't going their way, that they can adapt and recover and have, finish strong in the last quarter when it matters maybe. because if you're not very sort of strict on that ethos that you adapt and you're flexible, and it's not about numbers and scores, it's about the 15 of us as a whole and how we play together, you're going to run out of substitutes. Because if you don't teach that value in athletes, that they cope and they adapt, the amount of players that come and say to me, oh, if I don't get the first touch, I'm gone. And I think that that's absolutely madness, because, in a game you average 20 to 30 touches and your entire performance is being put down to the first touch. Why is it so detrimentally important to your performance if you don't get the first touch? And you see straight away, you set yourself up for a wee bit of a fall. As athletes, we'd never go out onto the pitch dehydrated, because we know with cramp we might, injure a muscle, so on and so forth. But when you go out there with these fictitious goals that have numbers attached, you are kind of a little bit psychologically dehydrated, because the slightest thing is going to throw you off and you won't recover. So you want to transition those goals into make it difficult for my attacker at all times, defend the best I can at all times, and transition when the opportunity arises. And they're just examples for a cornerback. You can, mimic the same on for your corner forward and your midfielders and so on. And I always, in lectures, I always get accused and say, well, hold on a sec, Emma. A second ago, you said make goals specific and make them aggressive. And now you're saying have these make it difficult, vague, bland goals. Before a game, you can be as specific and as aggressive as you want. But while you're in the midst of a performance and in the middle of a game, you have got to protect your confidence. You've got to be able to adapt, and you've got to be flexible. Because if you start to dip confidence-wise or psychologically-wise, the next 5 minutes, there could have been a goal you stopped, or there could have been some sort of skill you provided or whatnot that would have prevented, you losing or could have helped you win. Whereas if we get caught up on maybe one or two goals we're not reaching in the game, we don't tend to adapt on to the next phase or the last quarter of the game or whatever it is. So be very, very strict on them not to use numbers when they're setting goals for a game. Then the process goals, and again, not to be cliche, but if you don't build the foundations, the house doesn't stand up. So it is all about the foundation and that process, and getting your physical preparation right, your sleep, your nutrition, your hydration, attend in training, your effort in training, that sort of processes. And you see, if you look at that list, every single one of those things is within your control as an athlete, or in your athlete's control. A psychological preparation, then obviously, and I'm going to do these backwards. You've got your goals, which we just did. The visualization, that's, and not to bombard with lots of theories and lots of different things. There's a lot of work psychologically on imagery and visualization. I personally have a personal rule that if it's not broken, don't fix it. And I think, if you're to be honest, 99% of your athletes will lie in bed at night thinking about winning leagues and winning championships. And we don't need to go there. We don't need to say, tell me about what you imagine at night and what do you visualize, and leave them be. We do it naturally when we're daydreaming, when we're falling asleep at night. Athletes do it naturally. So I tend to leave well enough alone. The one thing I would mention to your athletes is if they are imagining themselves having a good game, and their heart rate begins to sort of elevate, you don't really want that. You want to be calm when you're visualizing yourself having a good performance. So just make them aware that if their heart rate is rising when they're visualizing themselves, just stop, bring the heart rate back down and start again. That's the only thing, because you don't want the body to respond to you visualizing in a negative way. And if the heart rate's increasing, it tends to be a nervous, you're almost pushing the body into flight or fight. You want to be calm, confident when you use that visualization. And then just the internal dialogue. I could pull a number of players over, 20 minutes before a game and say, what was your fluid intake today? What was your protein intake in the last 48 hours? Did you stretch? Did you do your band activation? Whatever it is. And they'll be able to tell me, yep, did this, did that, blah, blah, blah. It's just totally and utterly prepared. And I'll say to them, and what was the conversation like in your head this morning or last night? And a lot of them, A, don't want to tell me, or B, can't tell me. And again, it is about sort of trying to make sure that they're aware that they have to be good to themselves in that couple of hours coming up to a game. Because again, you are going out slightly half cooked. if you're doubting yourself or you're, remembering prior bad performances or so on and so forth. You've got to be really, really strict. And if there's a negative thought coming in, just getting up and moving, just going to get a drink, just going to do something that shakes that initial negative thought you may get. And really break it down for yourselves or for your players and say, like, you wouldn't go out there not fit, or you wouldn't go out there not hydrated. So don't go out there having a negative opinion of yourself, because they will, people will get one up on you because you're half cooked out there. So it's very, very strict. It's just like the hydration. It's just like the protein, the training. As soon as you get a negative thought, you're up, you're moving, and it tends to pass the negative thought a lot quicker. So what I've been trying to do an awful lot recently with goal setting and everything else, what we've lost more than anything is that sense of being together, as teams and as groups. And we're trying to do everything as individuals. And we came from team sports, and now we've been told to be motivated and to train as individuals. And we're finding it extremely difficult because A, we don't feel together, and B, there's two types of motivation, and I'm not going to bombard you either here because there's thousands of theories on motivation, but you usually have two types, right? You have people who are intrinsically or internally motivated, and they're your workers. You're just plain straight up workers. Do it for the team. No glory, no showboating, just want to be part of the team and help the team win. And then you've got people who are that little bit more externally or extrinsically motivated, a little bit of risk taker, a little bit of a showboat, or likes to be the main man or main woman on the attack and so on and so forth. Either or which, both work. It's kind of based on your personality, which one you have a tendency to be and what sort of systems motivate you. But neither of those people are getting any motivation now. Because those internal type people, they've no team to give to, they've no group to try and help, and the showboaters have no one to show off to. So nobody is getting fed the vessels of motivation that we normally do. So what we can do is we can use our goal setting, and we can look at how we can group them off, okay? And we do that by positions or roles. So a lot of Shane Mangan stuff, he looks at the difference in sort of the ground covered in Gaelic football, and hurling is very, very similar as well. So he looks at, kilometres travelled. So obviously you see here your full back and your full forward lines are averaging in around that 7.8k, all right? And your midfielders and those wing transitionary players are coming in at around 9-10 kilometres per game, okay? So what, like, a good idea that you can use, again, speeds for full back line and full forward lines. So what I'm trying to get teams to do at the minute is group your players, okay? So have your full back lines and your full forward lines together in a group, and have your wing players and your midfielders together, okay? Because those two have completely different physiological needs for a game, okay? So what you're doing by doing this is you're getting them fit, and like game fit, or as close as we can get to match fitness while we're not on the pitch. And you're getting it specific to the position, okay? So you want your full back and full forward lines to be doing a lot of explosive work, a lot of sprint work, whereas you want your wing and midfielder positions to do maybe a little bit more endurance, sort of engine work. So you can split them up and say, okay, I want my full forward and full backs to have, 21k covered by Wednesday. I want the midfielders to have 30, 40, 50, however many you group in that sort of endurance group done by Wednesday. Have it up in the WhatsApp group, or send it to me and we'll do up the chart and so on and so forth. And then you watch the internally motivated people who are like, right, well, I'm not going to let the backs down. I'm not going to let the forwards down. This is, they're usually the 6 or 7 you're out in the battlefield with, so you're not going to let them down. And same with the midfielder, the winger group. And then you have people who like to, who like to be the best, and that's fine. And they're thinking, right, well, I'll come in at that 11k now in the fastest time, and I'll be the fastest midfielder, or I'll be the fastest wing back, or I'll be the fastest out of all those transitionary sort of middle group players. And you see both types of players and both types of personalities are getting motivated there. But as we go on to a lot more of the physiological stuff in terms of explosive work that's needed for different positions, and more of the longevity, endurance stuff for other positions, it's beyond my scope. But Shane Flynn Fitness does an awful lot of work. His website's there and his Instagram's there. He's a very, very good resource in terms of what work needs to be done for different positions, because unfortunately they are different demands, and a team just can't be fit. Because again, like that, your cornerback and your cornerback, or your cornerback and your corner forward are going to be a lot more explosive, darting work. And that's what they need to work on fitness wise. Whereas again, midfielders are more keep the tempo, endurance type of work, and that's what they need. And he does an awful lot of work, very accessible, very easy to break down into, right, well, this is what I need this group to do, and that's what I need this group to do. And again, just to keep them together and to keep them motivated, you can group again the midfielders and the wings and the full back and full forward lines for skill tasks, or you can just give the team in general skill tasks to do. Colm Nally's YouTube channel has lovely skills and lovely training drills for you to do by yourself. He has some in pairs, so like if there's brothers or sisters living together, or when we do get to that point where maybe we're back in 3s and 4s, it might not be, football training or hurling training per se, but we could be doing little drills together as 3s and 4s when we do get back in whatever capacity. And his YouTube channel has a lot of videos that show exactly sort of what you're aiming for and what you're doing in those drills. And then the other one on Columns, I just brought it in as well. It's for ourselves as coaches and managers, because everything is just, it's surreal. And nothing really helped, because they said, look, football can come back in the 3rd phase, but contact sports can't come back in the 4th. And everybody was a bit like, well, we are a contact sport. So we don't know what it looks like as coaches. And it's uncertainty that brings a lack of confidence and brings on anxiety. So we don't know what it's going to look like for us when we come back. And Colm has a lot of stuff on social distancing if there's a warm up or some drills. It's a lovely resource there as well. So at least we think, okay, look, when we get back, I know that I can keep myself safe, my family safe, my players and my players' families safe. And it just means we're a little bit quicker out the traps, and we feel like, okay, we know what we're doing here when we get back. So it's a nice one to have, because remember too, I know athletes, we're all feeling it a little bit unsure. So, you need some resources too as coaches and managers to think, we know exactly what we're doing here to handle this return to play and handle this return to training. So there's some nice resources he's recently done there as well. So keeping a routine, or at least trying. This is the difficulty at the minute. So we're overloaded with these images, and I'd be a wealthy woman if you could just make an image and say, oh, wake up at the same time every day, go outside for a walk. And people thought, oh, that's great, thanks, I have a routine now and I can deal with everything. Our routines have been completely upended. Some people are working harder than they've ever worked. They're trying to work from home, manage kids, manage everything else. Some people have everything taken away. There is no work. There is nothing to do. There is none of those daily tasks that we needed to do previously. There's nothing. So some people are in very, very different boats. And there's no quick fix to any of this, unfortunately. Because really what you're trying to do is you're going to try and have to do a trial and error approach, really, as to what works for you. Some of us might be back to work soon enough. There's some of us that might not be back to work till maybe, after Christmas. So it is a trial and error approach about what works for you, like sleep, for an example. People always harp on about getting 8-9 hours sleep. It's not the quantity of sleep you get, it's the quality of sleep you get. So somebody could have 8 hours sleep and someone could have 5 hours sleep, and they're both benefiting from that sleep because it suits their cycle. So it is really, because you see these things and it's like, stick to the same meal time. You've 3 or 4 young kids running around the house and you say, well, you know what, I'm going to add to the chaos here by saying I'm simply only going to serve lunch at 12:45 every day. It's not going to work. And I think, again, a bit like the pitch, just be flexible, because some days are going to be very, very productive and they just go your way. Just like before all of this happened, we just have good days. But you're going to have your bad days where it's just chaos. And that could be because you have a house full, or it could be because you have a house empty and you just don't know how to get up and go. on that given day, and that's fine. And you've got to be flexible and adapt to some of your days being very productive and some of them being complete write-offs. Because when we were working and running around and juggling this busy life we had before this, when we rested, we were like, yeah, you know what, I just had a chilled out evening. You know, I was training yesterday evening, I was at work, and we don't feel anything. We're just thinking, yeah, I'm resting, I'm relaxing. But now, for some of us, there's so little to do. We're thinking, oh, should I be relaxing this much now, or should I be doing more? It is about finding a balance, and some days are going to be a write-off, and some days are going to be very, very productive. And it is about that flexibility of being thankful for the productive days and just letting the ones that are just a little bit more difficult to get stuff done, just let them go. Um, but it brings me on nicely to my next point, which is avoiding social media. Because I would be a huge advocate of raising awareness of the effects of social media before any of this, and especially on young people. But even more so now, it's vitally important because, you know, if you look back, we suddenly got hit with this mass of negative news, you know, global pandemic, and there was fear and panic in everybody. Like, can I keep my family safe? Can I keep myself safe? Will I lose my job? I've lost my job. Will I get it back? It was this massive, you know, cloud over everybody. And then suddenly, out of nowhere, everybody on Instagram and fitness pages like, this is the moment you can change your life and revolutionize your level of fitness. And people were thinking, is this Armageddon or is it Operation Transformation? I can't figure out what I'm supposed to be feeling here. Um, it suddenly became a test of how productive we can be in the midst of a global pandemic. And it was crazy. And that's what people are really, really struggling with, because you know, you're seeing people who are, you know, running marathons, and you're thinking, right, should I be at home? Should I be running a marathon? Should I be reading a book? Should I be starting a business? Because it's all coming from every side of us all over social media that this should be a really productive time in life. And it's not. It's not a productive time. It was, you know, an unpredicted pull of complete normality. And if all you do at the end of this is cope, that's completely fine. And if you come out the other side, say that was very strange, fine. If you pick up a new skill, fine. It is not a competition on how productive we can be. And I think it's so important we reaffirm that for ourselves and for the athletes we work with, because you know, you see it, Strava, Map My Run, it's constantly, every fitness page on Instagram now is just go, 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 and it's overwhelming. So when you do have those days that are a little bit of a wash, a little bit of a write-off, you're flicking online and you think, oh look, no, I should have been out running 50k, coming home, writing a book, eating some avocados, and being really, really productive. And that's the problem with social media, that you can't even take a day off without feeling incredibly guilty about it because of social media. So that's why we really need to teach ourselves in some cases, and the athletes we work with, that, you know, overload is not a good thing. So the three things you can do is, you can only, you know, where possible, follow accounts that make you feel good, that are actually beneficial. Or at least limit the time you interact with accounts that maybe don't make you feel that good, because there is some helpful fitness tips we get off some accounts, fine. But if you're beginning to compare and contrast, might knock it on the head, or at least limit the interaction time. Limit your time. So all the smartphones now have limiters on them. Like, I have a limit on mine. It's only 2 hours a day across all the social media platforms. So I could spend 20 minutes on Instagram and, you know, an hour or so on Facebook, and they'll combine, the 2 hours is over, and all the platforms knock off on my phone. And it's hard to get used to at the beginning, but after a while you don't. And then you see so many benefits from only having 2 hours of a 24-hour period spent on social media, because very often we don't gain a lot from it. You can also, I get all of mine to knock off at 10 o'clock at night. And I think that's really, really important, especially for people who are working, like with work emails and stuff. Because when you get the notification there, you think, oh, I'm not going to check it. I'm not going to check it. 5 seconds later or 5 minutes later, you've gone in to check it. Whereas if you've got everything to knock off at 10 o'clock, you know, you're none the wiser if you've no notification. So you're not tempted to go in. So most people knock things off at 9 or 10 o'clock at night to come back on at 7 o'clock in the morning. And again, it's just that, you know, we come away from always working and always being on the go. Like, and it's the very same thing. If I said to you at 11:30 at night, right, get up there and do, you know, 60 burpees. you think, well, no, I'm after doing my workout today. I've all my exercises done. And I'd say, well, it won't take you 2 seconds. What's one more little bout of exercise? And you think, you mad? I'd be waking up. I'd have to, blah, blah, blah. It is really the same thing when you're clicking into work emails or club emails at 11:30 at night. Upstairs is working. And you need to set your boundaries of, do you know what? I'm not working now. I'm just going to, get a good night's sleep or fall into some stupid program. You can just not think when you're watching it, because you do psychologically need a break as well as physically need a break. That's the psych part per se over. So I'm going to throw you back to Francie there to see if there's any questions.
No, they're pretty shy here at the minute.
Oh, okay.
What I would say though is there was an aspect there of routine and keeping a routine. But I suppose there's a lot of young people there that have had their routine completely destroyed in many aspects.
Yeah.
How do you then try and gauge whether or not you can not enforce is probably the wrong word, but how do you get them to then engage in another aspect that probably wasn't part of the routine because it's not in the pitch setting or it's not in the school setting, or do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
The normal day routine is gone, but how do you instill that new routine where maybe there's not a drive for them to do it because there's not that physical contact, to do it?
Yeah, so it would be just back to trying to work on those group goals where you'll pair them off, or you'll group them off into positions in their sport, and then they're feeling part of a team and part of, right, well, all the defenders or all the midfielders have to get this done. So it does give them a wee bit more accountability. In terms of a routine for teenagers, they're not great at having a routine in the best parts at the best of times. And in these uncertain circumstances, it's definitely not easy because, as you said, Francie, everything's been sort of upheavaled. What I would do is slowly kind of catchy monkey. So there's no point in saying, look, I want you up at 8 o'clock every morning and I want you out running by 10 o'clock. And, start slow, start sort of steady with sort of achieving one thing, first thing in a day. Very often, a lot of psychologists would say, just get up and make your bed first thing in the morning and do it every morning. And before you know it, you've a little bit of a routine going and you've one task completed. And it kind of sets the tone for that day going forward, that you can set up tasks. But it really, I think what you need to do is try and keep them together and remind them constantly that they're part of this group and they'll need the skills and the fitness that when we go back onto the pitch. And it is pulling them back together, whether it's all in for 2Ks and 5Ks, or you're splitting them up and you're setting them different challenges, might work to try and keep them together and keep them in some aspect of a fitness routine at least.
Okay, and then if you look at the social element of players meeting up with players, that obviously has been, we have Zoom now, we have our WhatsApp phone, but it's not the same. Like, how can you replicate that in the current situation without obviously going past the social restrictions?
Yeah.
Yeah,
that is the difficulty. And again, it's about feeling that we're not kind of close together. Like there is the Zoom exercises and the Zoom quizzes and stuff. But in the next section, when we look at performance analysis, there's actually some group tasks you can do, and you can split up in your team that they can have their own WhatsApp groups and their own, FaceTimes and Zoom meetings about little analysis projects that they can do. And again, it just gives them a sense of being together without maybe actually having to be together.
Super. Okay. Well, look, there's still no question. As I said, a pretty shy group there. So
that's
Oh, hold on. Sorry. Here we have one from the secretary of Burt Hurling Club. I think it is in Donegal. We have had difficulty keeping players engaged. We have tried running 50Ks in a month and such team-based. Such team-based initiatives, but have had little uptake. So have just been keeping the WhatsApp updated with all the latest info from the LGFA. Do you think that's enough for seniors or underage?
We had the very same difficulty, and a lot of teams I've been doing work like this will have that same difficulty. And I think a lot of the time what we're missing is the competitiveness. So I've nobody to compete against, and that's the difficulty I have. So it's like, here, run your 3Ks by Friday, run your 5Ks by Sunday. I think I don't really care. You know what I mean? Because sometimes I'm not seeing the arch enemy's 5K, so I'm not thinking, right, well, if she's coming in at 19 minutes, I want to be coming in at 17 minutes. Or It's the lack of competitiveness for those more externally motivated, and the lack of coming together for the more internally motivated. And I think that's why if we set sort of specific goals where people are accountable for them, so if everybody doesn't pull their weight, the defenders aren't going to come in on target. Or if everybody doesn't pull their weight, the midfielders aren't going to come in on target. And you've got accountability and you've got responsibility there, especially with the seniors. You could try that. I know a couple of clubs who ran like shopping voucher competitions. I don't think they worked overly well. I to be honest, I see you're dealing with athletes who are used to playing a team sport, and now we have no teammates and we have no opposition. So I would suggest try and bring in a little bit of competitiveness. Like there needs to be a winner or like a top three or something along those lines, and you'll get those more competitive individuals back in and engaged.
Okay, hopefully. Oh, we started a senior ladies team this year, so I'm conscious that we are still at the very early stage of their mentality. Thanks very much. Okay, super job. Hopefully that answered your bit. Okay. You can dodge on there then.
Perfect. Okay, so then we've got more of the performance enhancement stuff, and we look at individual performance profiles, personal performance analysis, and it's just a wee smidge of oppositional analysis. And again, it's keeping football and hurling to the forefront. It's keeping our mind busy. It's getting us excited and motivated to be back by looking at things. Because, like I said, we can't train and we can't play games. So the real exciting stuff's almost gone on us a wee bit. But when we bring it back and when we look at performance analysis, we can kind of get a little bit hungry again and a little bit aggressive, or at least we hope we can. So you can ask your athletes, or you can do for yourself what we kind of term performance profiles. Some people call them spider webs, some people call them performance wheels. But it's basically a visual aid to help your athletes see, okay, these are the strong aspects of my performance, but these are the areas I might need a wee bit of improvement on. And visual aids are really, really helpful because it's there. I know professional athletes, ruthless as they are, they'll get these type of visuals and they'll hang them up on a bedroom wall or somewhere where they'll see it every morning and think, right, there's your weakness now. That's what you have to tackle for the day. Some people can use it actually to boost the confidence when they see that the discrepancies aren't too large. I am a big advocate of performance profiles because sometimes, again, a bit like, we're quite vague. We think, well, I'm all right, or I'm okay, or I'm brilliant. And you're thinking, right, we'll strip that back down into a couple of skills for me and let's see how brilliant you are, or let's see how weak you are if you're dealing with the less confident individuals. Now, there's 4 stages to these performance profiles per se. You've got your tactics, your technical aspects, your physical ones, and your psychological ones. I'm going to be brutally honest. I only really ever use 2 with athletes. It's a lot of paperwork. It's a little bit overwhelming. I don't need 4 wheels, to try and juggle to see where I'm at performance-wise. My advice, if you're going to take these on with players, and I have everything, all the resources sent to Francie, I have the example and the blank sheets and the wheel itself, if you want to get your players engaged and doing things like this. But my advice would just be stick to a psychological performance profile. And, it's kind of like a combination of your tactical and technical side of things on another performance wheel. Other than that, it gets a little bit muddy and a little bit confusing. And a lot of work, really, that's unnecessary, to be honest. So what you're ideally doing is you're asking an athlete for a self-evaluation, basically, a self-assessment of their performance. People do struggle with this, especially sort of when they're new to the performance profile, and they've maybe never done anything like this before. So the best way I would describe it very simply is, say you have your midfielder on the phone with you or on a Zoom call, and you want him or her to fill out a performance profile. And again, midfield, and he's thinking, and you say, right, who is the best midfielder in Gaelic football at the moment? And for example, no bias, he says, right, Tom Parsons. And you say, okay, what are the 5 skills Tom Parsons does exceptionally well? Like, what are his 5 key components to the performance? And he'll say things like, aids attack, carries the ball, always has his head up, whatever it is. All right. And you'll say, okay, write those 5 skills down that Tom does really well, and then score yourself out of 1 to 10 on those 5 skills. Then what you need to do is score Tom, or an ideal score, in those 5 skills, and you have your discrepancy rate. Okay, so it's this end line here that you're looking for, this difference between the ideal or the champion in that position and your self-assessment. So again, it makes a lot more sense on this example here. So you have your technical skills: soloing, free kicks, tackling, reading the game, making space, scoring points, and scoring goals. Okay, so this is where he or she feels they are at present. Okay, that second column from the left. The ideal then, what's the ideal score, or where would you ideally like to be, or where is Tom Parsons at the minute? Where is Cora Staunton a corner forward? Whatever it is. And then you look at the discrepancy rate. Okay, so the difference between where they feel they are at the moment and where the best in that position is, or where they feel they should be. So if you're looking at this then from a coach or a trainer's perspective, what you'd be worried about here is free kicks, reading the game, and scoring goals. Okay, because that's where we see the biggest discrepancy rates. And all a matter it is just filling in the wheel, then it's just colouring in the wheel. Again, if you were doing psychological ones, you have your confidence, attention, teamwork, commitment, responsibility, intensity, and self-forgiveness. These are just examples I've taken. Again, they're psychological skills, where he or she feels they're at the moment, where they ideally like to be, and the discrepancy rate. Okay, you will, I put this example in for 2 reasons on purpose. You will get athletes who go 10, 10, 10, 10, 10, 10, 10. And I see a lot of psychologists make the mistake of being like, oh, come on, you can't be 10 at everything. If people want to be 10 at absolutely every skill, will they be? Who knows? But if they want to work hard enough to try be a 10 at everything, I wouldn't be standing in their way. So if you get this back then as a coach or a trainer, you're looking at confidence as a bit of an issue and self-forgiveness as a bit of an issue. And I purposely put this in here because we are infamously bad at self-forgiveness as athletes. It seems to be really hard, and even harder as time goes past, to forgive yourself for a bad performance. I want to put it to you simply, for yourself and for the athletes you work with. I want you to imagine you get into your car tomorrow morning and you're driving down the road as you normally do, and you're a little bit tired, or you start thinking about something else, or you just slip in concentration for a split second and you grind your gears. No big deal. Do it all the time. Doesn't really matter. All right. But imagine you come home and say that you won't believe what I'm after doing there now. You just won't believe it. I can't believe it. And imagine you lay in bed tomorrow night thinking about it and playing it over and over and over and over again in your head, that you slipped. Your hand slipped on the gear stick and you grinded your gears. And imagine you get up on Saturday morning and you put your hand on the handle of the door and you think, what if I grind my gears again now? What if this happens to me again? You see how mad this sounds. And we don't ever think like that. We just think, what was that about? And we go on about our business and we don't even think about it. It was just a simple mistake that we made in a split second and we move on. It's because we're emotional about our performances that we attach emotion to error. And no, there's nothing wrong with that necessarily. A lot of psychologists will say you have to take the emotion out of everything. You're standing there at full back and someone's charging in for a goal the last 2 minutes of a county final. You're not going to be, you're not going to be blasé. There's going to be a hell of a lot of emotions for those couple of seconds. So I'm not one of these people that promotes a lack of emotion. But instead, if you want to control your performance, you have to control your emotions, and that comes with self-forgiveness. So it's vitally important, from as young as you get them to as old as they finish up, that you constantly teach this ethos of self-forgiveness, whether it's post-performance or mid-performance. We are wonderful human beings. Our brains are extremely complex, magnificent machines. But remember, we miss our own mouth when we're drinking tea. We try to get out of the car with seatbelts on us. We make mistakes. We have constant errors. There's so much going on in the brain that sometimes it just forgets what it's doing. So it's definitely going to forget what it's doing when you're physiologically fatigued, or you're tired, and you've made multiple decisions, a high pressure game. So you've got to make sure that people know mistakes are going to be made out there, and that goes without question. And you place the emphasis on how you recover from errors and from mistakes, and no shouting and no bawling and no sort of reprimanding for mistakes, because you really do untold damage in that aspect there, in terms of people having the confidence to maybe make a risky move on the ball if there's a constant bawling and screaming from errors. And there's a lot of people who think, oh, you go a little bit too sort of deep into things. Try and do it with your athletes and see and suggest self-forgiveness and see what the discrepancy comes back at. Because it's overwhelmingly one of the main problems I have to deal with athletes, whether they be GAA athletes, professional athletes. It's this: I should not have made that mistake. Like, they're almost robotic. You're not a computer. And that comes from somewhere along the line. There was an atmosphere of, we don't make mistakes on this team. And it's really a false economy, because they're going to be made. And a bit like the goal setting, you want that early adaptability, flexibility, and recovery from an error. Because the best athletes in the game, in any game, will make mistakes, and especially in the younger ones, it's better to teach them to have maybe tried something and made the mistake than have taken themselves out of the game by purposely putting themselves in the wrong position. So then when you're set up and you see discrepancies like reading the game, or you see discrepancies like confidence, that's when you implement your plan, and you go back to the goal setting we did earlier. Okay, you're like, right, so let's look at reading the game. How do I do that a little bit better? And people, question the madness here, but looking at football matches is actually the best way we can teach athletes who may not get a whole lot of game time to read the game. You see countless Premier League managers come out and say, like, such was the best substitute to bring on because he consistently watched the game as it proceeded, so he didn't need that couple of seconds to get into the game. And there's a lot of research in that the brain actually can't distinguish between when we're actually doing something and when we're watching it. It's a bit like muscle memory, it thinks we're doing it. So it's opening up those little chains where we know what we're doing. So it's really, really beneficial for something like that. But that's how you address some of the areas of improvement in a performance. And that kind of ties me nicely into some of the at-home projects players and teams can do. So again, it's like performance profiles. We tend to ask athletes to model, and it works particularly well with young athletes, to model off the top of in their game. So the top midfielder, the top corner forward, the top fullback, so on and so forth. So say, for example, you have your corner forward image, and you can set little projects, and you could say, okay, who do you think is the best corner forward in the game? And they can say maybe Conor McManus. Okay, so you say, all right, okay, I want you to go and find football games, Monaghan playing maybe championship matches, important ones, okay? And I want you to come back to me and tell me how Conor McManus creates space. I want you to tell me how he does that infamous loop around run. Everybody knows he's going to do it. He still manages to do it without, really being held back in any way. How does he lose his man? How does he line himself up for a score? What does he do when he takes frees? And what you're aiming for, especially in young athletes here, is a little bit of secondary learning. So they begin to know what it looks like for their body to be in the right position to take a free or to pop the shot off. They begin to know what it looks like when it's not the right time to pop that shot and turn back around. And especially now, like if you look at the NFL, they do a lot of virtual reality, especially when athletes are injured. And say the GAA was a multi-billion company and professional, we probably will be doing the same thing. So now that we have this, untold time and opportunity, we really can use it to sort of tune in the brain. And the GAA have opened up their archives. So you've a limited amount of Conor McManus footage, David Clifford footage, whoever it is, and really tend to leave that up to the athlete too. Like, who do you think is at the top of his or her game in your position? And, see what they come back with. And they'll begin to understand maybe more of the patterns involved, the movements involved, what the body should look like before we take a free, before we pop a shot off, when he recognizes he hasn't got enough space there, so he comes back around. And again, it's this secondary learning, and trust me, it really, really, really works, because there's billions being spent on it in the NFL and the NBA every year. Because it's like, it's like 50 press ups for the brain. It's like your 5Ks for the brain. You're beginning to see it. And you're beginning to see all those tiny movements and sort of things in front of good corner forwards that when you're out there playing, when we are back, you'll think, oh, I've seen this before. I'm going to turn around because this isn't the time to try and get the shot off. And very similar, then you can do lots of teamworks and projects. And again, it's for you as well, for managers and coaches. And we've all been pulled out of routines and we're all missing football. And, it's hard on everybody. So don't be afraid to get involved yourselves and make this a club thing and a team thing and a juvenile thing and whatever. And it doesn't sound as simple, but it is. You can set up these little performance analysis projects. And again, you're looking for that secondary learning and you're keeping football and hurling in the forefront of people's brain. You're reminding them the intensity and the graw and the excitement we have for it. That's why they're rerunning old TV games on television, because we really, really miss it. We just want to watch it even. So if you make this a group thing and a competitive thing and you're benefiting from that secondary learning then as well. So obviously we use performance analysis. So again, those strong points of performance, you get to recognize them. So you repeat them, hopefully. And maybe some more unsuccessful areas, you can figure out what went wrong and how to improve on it. A lot of the technical stuff looks at scores, wides, turnovers, tackles, possession. But your KPIs, that's how you start off. So you, as the coach or the manager or as a player, say, right, what are the key performance indicators in a game of football? How do teams win? And no matter what analyst you're dealing with or who you're talking to or looking to, it really always comes back to the same thing. You need to score. You need to have possession to score. You need to prevent the opposition from scoring too much, or at least outscoring you. And don't make too many errors, okay? So again, errors are going to be made. The opposition are going to score. But as long as you don't make too many errors and they don't outscore you, you should have those regular KPIs to win. And again, I've sent these on to Francie as blanks and as examples that you can send out to players in groups or individuals, or set up like project work for people. And you could say, right, I want you to go and look at the Kerry Dublin replay. Or I want you to, and I have it in a couple of slides, like if you have games that you've played or video games of oppositions you'd look at or whatever, happy days. If you don't, like, who do you model off? Like, are you trying to set yourself up like the Galway Camogie team? Are you trying to set yourself up like Mayo, like Dublin? What's your agenda? And try and model that pattern of play and your team off that team. So you look at scores. It's yours or the opposition's. So say, for example, we take the opposition. You could say to players, okay, who is doing the scoring in the first 15 minutes? Okay, break it down, because to ask them to watch a whole hour, you kind of do have to pause it and slow it down in slow motion and stuff. But they're really, really fun projects they can do together on Zoom and on Skype. Who's doing the scoring and where are they scoring from? And an important aspect as well, so we get that secondary learning for playing invasion-based sports, is there a feeder? So who is feeding in this main scorer, the ball or the sliotar? And is there decoy runs being made to open up the space? And if so, who's making that sort of decoy run? And by asking these questions, some of your players might think, what's a decoy run? What? I see players all the time, 16, 17-year-old young women and phenomenal footballers. And, example, last year we said, you centre half forward today. Where's that? And one of our best footballers, hands down. So, sometimes the lingo just isn't there. We're not fully holistically understood what's going on. So even getting them thinking of, well, what does a decoy run mean? Why does it impact us? Why would it impact me as a defender? Why would it impact me as an attacker? Again, wides, pretty straightforward. Who's a little bit, off their game today? Where are they predominantly getting wides from? So that's, and you can tell you're probably moving a little bit more towards your minor adult squads here. Where do we pressure point? Where do we press? Because they're not good from scoring in this area. Possessions, areas of dominance, kickouts. You can kind of break some teams down. That do they let you get your own kick out and then kind of smother you in a certain area? or did they try to get the kickouts from the beginning for both? And it's just a little something that, again, you can learn about oppositions or learn about predominant teams, really. Key players, again, where do they play? But the important thing as well is when we're looking at key players in oppositions or in teams is how. Like, what is it that's making them a key player? Because we forget this sometimes. Is it the scores? Is it the assists? Or is it the defense? And again, we become overly obsessed with people's attackers because we see that they do the damage. When in actual fact, sometimes other teams and other oppositions have really, really strong defenders or a defender. And how is it that they defend so well, they keep you out or they keep other teams out? And again, it's about explaining systems to players. It's about keeping them together on group projects, but it's about understanding to, if you've got a younger group of players, what it means to be the person who feeds the scorer. And somebody might say, well, that's my role, or that's what he means when he's saying that's when you give it in, or that's what he means by saying it's not always the person who kicks it over the bar or pucks it over the bar. And they can see it and they can model it off the, Galway's Camogie team, or they can model it off Dublin or whoever it is. And again, it's this 360 learning you're trying to do. I would probably promote this anyway. But I definitely would now that we've time and we don't actually have the ability to get out onto the pitch and train or do drills, so it really is beneficial. So as I said, if you've got videos of yourselves playing or oppositions you normally play, happy days, use them. If you don't, the GAA have opened their archives, so you can go in to any team and look at them and how they play. So there's kind of two ways you can look at that. You can say, right, well, we want to model ourselves off how Galway Camogie team play, or we want to model ourselves off how Dublin play. So you go in there and that's how you look at all the Galway Camogie, or you look at all the Dublin games. But say, for example, this is just an example, you want to play a system of using that middle third. So there's teams that's where a lot of their activity will be. And they're trying to fatigue the defense, so somebody falls asleep and they get in, or they draw you to them so they get in behind you. So say you either want to be one of those teams, or you play a lot of those teams, or you get caught out by teams who compact that middle third. Mayo are a great example for the middle third, because a lot of their activity is in the middle third. That's how they tend to capitalize on the opposition, is they suck you into the middle third to them, or they wait for somebody to just fall asleep for a split second and bang. So you can send sort of maybe appropriate screen grabs or get them to watch Mayo play football and say to them, okay, look, we're trying to set up the middle third system here. So look at the amount of players Mayo have in the middle third. Look at how they're spaced out. And what you're trying to show players here, for example, say your system is the middle third. The line here Mayo have on that left-hand side, okay? They keep that line there at the back of that middle third. Two reasons. In case the ball needs to come back to them, but in case they're overturned, they're still slightly set up defensively to deal with a turnover, okay? So you're saying, okay, look, this is where we should be to still protect ourselves defensively. We've still got options should the ball need to be recycled. But then you're saying again here, but look at the angle and width that they keep to their attack. So when you say to people, this is your role in this transitionary middle third, you say, you've got to hold that line for us defensively, or you've got to, you say to your full forward line, you've got to keep that width and angle to our attack when we try and get that ball in past the middle third. Again, these are just examples. How you want to set up tactically is how you want to set up tactically, but they're just examples that you can use for players to see it and to see that secondary learning again. So people who are trying to play these systems begin to see, okay, well, I know I should be here with two or three other more defensively back here players with me. You might see a corner forward who sees he's right beside another corner forward and says, well, we don't have width here. Let me pull out a little bit because I'm creating space and I'm creating width. And again, it is through that secondary learning. Another example, you could play a team that's very defensive, or you could say, do you know what, we need to work on our defence or our lack of defence. So again, you might, and just an example, you might watch Donegal. and they're quite, they do what they do defensively. So again, you're asking players to watch that position of the sweeper. Look at where he holds. Like, how does he hold up the front door and keep it safe? What's he doing or she doing in ladies football or camogie? And then you're looking at this almost straight line. Donegal have a tendency to keep in front of their sweeper. So again, say you're trying to introduce, I don't like to say a sweeper, but a sweeper, because sweeper gets a lot of negative, reaction, undue, to be fair, but you have a last man back or last woman back mentality, or you have a sweeper. What you're doing there is, by secondary learning, you're saying to the sweeper, this is what it looks like for you. You should have those 3 or 4 women or those 3 or 4 men in front of you in that sort of linear shape, right? So when we do get back, he or she knows, well, hold on, these 2 are too close. You need to pull back a little bit there because we have a gap, and we're going to get exposed in that gap there. And it is really the best we can do off the field is by watching games and watching teams that play a very, very proficient system and asking your players to see it or to tell you what they see. I could look at this picture now of Donegal as a defender myself and think, brilliant, happy days. Yeah, I'd be happy enough there in that full back line. And our corner forward in our team could say, lovely, see all this space in here to the right of the sweeper. I'd be in there, no problem. And you learn so much about your players, and they learn a lot about of what it looks like for them and what they need for space and to get in. So as I said, I would be a big advocate on this, secondary learning through analysis. It's interesting, it's group projects. You're keeping football, camogie, hurling, whatever, to the front of the brain. And, we're learning, we're constantly learning as what it needs to look like us, as defenders, as attackers, as midfielders. And, can we see opportunities in freeze frames that we would use? Can defenders see, where somebody might be in a better position? Like, freeze frame, tell me who's in no man's land. So on and so forth. And they're group projects. They should keep you together. They should keep you working on things. But again, I think, especially with young people, the more, and again, it's kind of controversial because it's screen time. But if you watch football and you watch the best teams play, you're always learning. You're always picking up information. And if you do it like this through group projects, you're also keeping them together. So that would be the end of the analysis part, and us really as a whole. So if there's any questions, Francie?
There is indeed. I'll just start off here with here. Any advice on engagement under 11 and a half, under 9 and a half football teams during this period? They've had weekly skill challenges up to week 9 now, and the uptake from the child doing it, or at least the parents posting their videos and skills, have dipped. Any advice on how to get a boost of engagement?
Say that last part to me again, Francie, sorry.
Any advice on how you might get a boost in the engagement from the parent or the child?
So it started well and it dipped?
Yeah.
What I might do is maybe change it slightly there in terms of, it's been a skill test and they've been demonstrating that, they've been showing the videos. I'd probably try and slightly change it, and it's going to be slightly, a little bit of drift here. But if they could make, a funny TikTok video and then for a week and then go back to skills, and then it might be, some other funny project, handstands or little tricks or jokes, whatever's happening at the minute. And then back to a skills test the following week, and then back again. It's just the fact that a constant skills test every week is going to become boring for the child. So if you can make it fun, I suppose, yes, we want to keep them engaging in their skills and we want to keep them practicing. But more importantly, right now, what we have to deal with is keeping them together and making sure and reminding them constantly that they're part of a group. So sometimes it might not be a skills test you need. It might be just something a little bit quirky, a little bit out there, but it keeps them together. And especially at that young age where it really is about fun at the minute.
Neil, I suppose we did something similar here as well. And I suppose if I knew that it was going to last 10, 11 weeks, I probably wouldn't have started it, if I'm being honest. Yeah. But I suppose after the first 6 weeks, maybe after the week 6, I kind of changed it around a wee bit, and I got a cookery demonstration done and got the kids to get involved that way. We did a fitness workout with one of the local businesses, and then we did a yoga session as well. So we kind of changed it up as much as we can, and basically, I suppose, as I say, we're into week 11 now. This is probably the last thing that we'll try and work on, because obviously everything's kind of restriction-wise is starting to come to an end now in some kind of capacity. So I see Tuesday night's last webinar as the last bit in terms of the lockdown, in my eyes, so to speak, or in terms of trying to provide a positive distraction for those people that engage in it. And again, I know you can't, how would you put it? You can't force people to engage in your activities. But when you can see that people are accessing your activities, that's the bit that maybe kept me going over the initial 4 or 5 weeks whenever I seen that engagement was dipping. But I knew then at that point it was time to change it up. And as I say, we did the have a go sessions where they did a cookery demonstration. You'll see this all on the club's Facebook page if you want to dive back into it. But there is I had something similar in terms of that issue, and we worked around it as best we could. Hopefully that helped you. So we actually did the yoga challenge on the club's Facebook page, Neil, and same with the fitness video the week before. And the same with the cookery. The cookery was like a cook with me as opposed to a live cooking demonstration. So look, there's loads of options out there. Just mix it up, I think, is what Emma's trying to say. That appears to. Oh, hold on. Okay, look at folks. If there's nothing else, again, I'd just like to say thanks to Emma. To me, psychology is a difficult one. I know she'll not say that, but it's also something that I've probably struggled to grasp with over the years, even in a playing capacity. But I can see how Emma's head works there, having worked with her in the past, and probably will be working with her in the future as well in some kind of capacity. So look, again, Emma, thanks very much for giving your time. It is much appreciated. And as I say, folks, the recording, obviously because the broadband in South Armagh is that poor, it'll take me about 2 or 3 hours to get it downloaded. But we'll get that sent out to you as long with the presentation and the material that Emma has sent through.
Yeah.
So if there's nothing else, folks, thanks very much. Much appreciated. And again, the last webinar on Tuesday night is with Sharon Courtney, who is the former Monaghan ladies captain, and she is a sports nutritionist, and she's going to give the final one for us to hopefully end the lockdown for myself anyway and get things